And so I'd like to talk just a little bit about his characteristics as compared to theirs. He has a fairly small jaw for the size of his head. If you look at the size of this horse's jaw and this horse's jaw compared to the size of their head, theirs are much larger. And remember, this is all just indicators. They're not written in stone. It doesn't mean your horse will necessarily be this way. It just means that usually when we see this physical characteristic, this type of character goes along with it. And it's complicated, you know. You can have a horse with 10 directly opposing head characteristics, like a large jaw with a tiny little eye set high in the head. And a large jaw would say, I'm pretty intelligent, you know, kind of steady, reliable kind of personality, and the high eye with little tiny high eye set in the head would say, but I'm really worried about everything, and I'm you know, kind of an inward-looking kind of character. So sometimes they don't all add up to a coherent picture because they're such different characteristics. So he has a moderate, you know, moderate to small jaw. His head is longer and narrower than theirs is from the front. He has interesting eyes if you look at him straight on. See how differently they're set on his head? One side to the other.
We all have to look at this now.
This eye is fairly forward in his head, and it mainly looks, if you just look at the eyeball, it looks like it's looking forward. This eye is set farther back and higher on his head, and if you look at the direction of the eye, it looks like it's looking outward. So he has different vision than a horse who has two eyes that are set the same in their head and protrude the same amount and look in the same direction. Not bad, it's just different, just like us, you know. I have two really different eyes in my head, so no big deal. He also has fairly long, but they're shapely. They're nicely shaped, but they're fairly long ears. And when he's excited, they stick straight up. They're not way forward like that. They're kind of straight up. Those are usually associated with flight horses. The smaller jaw is a horse that's not the most curious, not the most intelligent. He's more like the middle of the road learner. But he also has, you know, this really straight forehead, straight as it can be. So that's a really steady guy. The space between his eyes is quite wide, even though his whole head's not wide. Intelligent, reliable, steady. The space between his ears is wide, intelligent, reliable, steady. So even though he has the longer ear that stands straight up, when he's excited, which is a flight characteristic, he has all these other characteristics that say, I'm pretty intelligent, I'm pretty reliable, pretty steady. He's just got one swirl, and it tends to be a long swirl. It tends to go this way, and that's usually, long swirl horses usually like people. They usually enjoy their friendly guys. He's got a really square muzzle. If you look at his muzzle from the side, it's like a square. It's not very round, it's really square. And that's another reliable, steady kind of guy, not complicated, uncomplicated. His little chin, we've already worked with his chin a lot. His chin used to be just like this little hard point. And now it's soft and round. It's still pretty tight, but soft and round. And that hard pointy chin is a horse that's anxious, and it can change. He's got a fairly short mouth for the length of his head. So that's, again, a horse that doesn't learn things as quickly as some other horses do. But he's the kind that he's reliable, he's steady, he wants to do what you want him to do. He's a friendly guy, he's very willing, it's just not real complicated, and that's great, you know?
We love him.
Some other horses with like the horses with the longer mouth tend to be thinkers. Something's constantly going on up there, you know. And if you get it combined with a really big jowl, you can have the horses that open every gate, that, you know, get in trouble. They're trying to figure out ways to avoid you when you're riding them. And this this guy, because he's kind of a middle of the road, steady, reliable, willing, likes people, means that he's a really good match for Sarah, because he's not trying to figure out ways to, get his own way or get in trouble or any of that. He just wants to do what she says and kind of be a middle of the road kind of guy, and that's a perfect match. Perfect match.
And it's just so interesting because we can see he does like people, but you know what it was like up there where he's living. They thought he didn't like people.
Yeah. He wouldn't be caught. So these two guys, this guy especially, I mean, look at the size of his jowl in relationship to his head. Really large jowl. He's also got a really interesting characteristic. He's got a Roman head. And that is a characteristic you see in guys who learn their job and then they want to just do their job. They don't really want to have to learn a whole lot of new stuff. They just want to do their job. And it's a great, it keeps them out to the side like this. They're never up real straight. They're shapely, but not overly shapely where they have really long tips that point together. They're kind of open and wide.
Yeah.
And those are, if they were shorter, he could have that pony attitude. You get them too short in those pin ears and you often see that it's related to this real stubbornness. And his are long, not long, but they're open and they're just, a moderate length and they're kind of loose and floppy. They're placed really wide on his head, and those are all indicators of reliability, steadiness. Yeah. Really soft chin, soft round chin.
And is his mouth considered medium?
His mouth is
versus-
average, yeah, it's
not
just
long,
medium.
not short.
Yeah, just
Looks like he's frowning. What does that mean?
what?
Frowning down?
Got a little.
Yeah, I think that's just because he keeps his lower lip relaxed almost all the time. He always has it just pretty relaxed. And this guy, he's
Hello.
very elderly, so his eyes are a little bit more sunken in than they used to be when he was younger, and he has a lot of sinking here. But pretty refined head, fairly large jowl, not quite as large as his, but a fairly large jowl. A little bit of a dip here. He's got some Arabian in him, so that may or may not be an indicator of greater reactivity. On Arabs, you often have a bulge with a dip, and don't buy those kind of Arabs because they're nearly always more reactive than the average. You really want this flat, like he has, flat, broad forehead, and the little dip is curiosity if you don't have the combination of the bulge and the dip. Boy, you get the bulge and the dip. And again, not set in stone, not every horse will be like that, but when I first started studying this, I thought it was such a load of crap. It was just like, yeah, right, sure. But that was 20-some years ago, and the amount of time that it's accurate is amazing. You can really tell a lot about a horse when you first come up to him if you just notice what the indicators are. He also has a really round muzzle, which is not quite as stable as the guy with the square muzzle. The square muzzle is the most stable character, but it's still pretty soft and I'd say steady, reliable, kind of just middle of the road. He also has much nicer, wider, more refined nostrils than either of these other guys. So he's going to be, theoretically, he should be more sensitive and a little more open to what goes on in the world. And we don't really know because he's lived in this lesson situation. But as a trail horse, he's peerless. As a trail horse, he'll go anywhere. He never bucks, he never runs away, he never does anything, but he also goes forward. He's just a fabulous trail horse. So your work.